Alright, there we go. Alright, we are up.
Hi everybody.
Yeah, so like this time on Dice Are Not Included, we will be discussing how to make a character that you're attached to and how to make a character that is interesting for the whole party. We have a guest today, our guest Kim, and
Hello.
we will be discussing just kind of like how she made her character and then like characters that we've had. Um, I think Kim, like with your character Selenia, uh, you you actually had a very deep backstory with her. What kind of went into your um, just like your thought process on making her? What was important to you, and what was like what really like hung your focus as far as like what she should be?
Honestly, what kind of a lot of stuff about Selenia, like her origins and everything. Some of it didn't necessarily come from me, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
Because a little bit of trivia: Selenia was actually my very first TTRPG character that I ever played, but she was not for D&D.
Oh really?
Yeah, I actually first started playing her in a game of 13th Age.
Oh wow.
Oh.
Which, I actually... There's some things that I like more about 13th Age than D&D, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's sometimes like there's like roles you're just like, why is this like even a thing?
Why is this so simple yet
So,
so complicated?
like, for example, the thing about her chair, that she has this chair, originally it was a walking chair.
Okay.
Like Beauty and the Beast style.
Yeah.
And the idea for that actually came from my DM at the time. My DM was a guy named John Marvin. And I approached him, I kind of sent him an email before the campaign started and said, hey, I want to have a character who is paraplegic, and here's, some of my ideas for it. And like, honestly, that was the part, because that was the part that was important to me, was I wanted to have a character who was paraplegic, because I'm in a wheelchair, and it's just something that you don't see a whole lot of.
Yeah, for sure.
So I came to him with the ideas of, maybe she has, a mount, or dual wields quarterstabs that are clutches.
I mean, I think that's honestly like some of the best things you could do is to just like bring pieces of like who we are into the characters, because sometimes you want a character who's different than you. And even
Yeah.
then, even when you're like, I want to make someone who's nothing like me, you're still putting yourself in the character because you're identifying things that are you and then just doing the opposite, you know?
Yeah, so the walking chair thing was actually John's idea. Because I came to him about, okay, here's my ideas, and he was like, well, that would actually be cooler. Where? Sorry, I'm distracted because
You're fine. That is one of the things that we've learned is how do we do both of these at the same time?
Yeah, but it's also like a cool backdrop, in my opinion.
I always find that sometimes I have to turn my mind off of the game. Like, okay, I'm gonna die.
Yeah. um, so with Selenia, one thing that I really enjoyed too about her was like her villains that she has.
Oh yeah, that was also partially inspired by John, because his idea was, what if she stole the chair from the circus that she was in? It's like, okay, I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna run with it.
Yeah.
And I took a little bit of inspiration from Dr. Dranzel's troupe from Critical Role.
Oh right.
Yeah.
So the menagerie is basically, what if Dr. Dranzel was actually an evil, creepy bastard? And then just kind of
That was dumb of
mush
me.
it.
Sorry.
Oh, you are fine.
But I think that's really interesting too because it brings up a lot of good, not even just villains, but just story hooks that a DM can use for a character just with the backstory of this entire truth that you created, or you and your DM created. Which is really, really cool.
Yeah, the collaboration that you'll see sometimes in games is like pretty wild, and sometimes not even on purpose. Last night, me and Josh had that experience too of just like things that we had, both as players and as the DM. We're just like, in the beginning, you're like, oh, how did this like mesh at all? And then like you're like, oh wow, it's like perfectly like in sync.
If you want to give them some like backstory for some of the things that happened last night,
Oh yeah.
about your character, and then I can give them.
Yeah. So my character last night is Alistair Bellevue, and he is a cleric who used to be a cleric of Arathis, the god of civilization. And during the events of Critical Role, the giant stone titan went through the basically the entire continent or partial continent of Isilra and just rampaged through. Well, he lived in a village that wasn't far from Vasselheim, and his whole village just got crushed, and his family was trying to run, and they died. And when he went to the city to like, hey, what the hell happened? I thought you were supposed to come and like protect us. I thought you were gonna send people if something bad happened. That's always been what you said was gonna happen. And they told him, sorry, businesses and the mother city are way more important than some little village. And basically that made him lose faith, and he fell to the dark side kind of. And the thing about him was he fell to the dark side in that like he was willing to do anything to make people who were corrupt suffer. And he sided with the Nine Hells with Asmodeus, and during the course of our campaign, he's leaned into that. But then, I guess the Hells have been kind of in a difficult position, so they have said, "Oh, we need it, anything goes. No more rules as far as getting souls go." And he was like, "Okay." And then after thinking about it, he's like, "Why am I like? How am I gonna bring myself to do this? Like, I told myself I wouldn't prey on the innocent, and now they're asking me to." And he went seeking guidance, and ended up talking to his old god. And it was like, for me, it was a really meaningful moment of like, and I put a little of myself into this, and I was like saying, you know, like, how can we like reconcile that we can make excuses to with our own like dogma to say, oh, it's okay to just let people die. They don't like this was more important, or like they don't deserve it, or whatever it is. And it was like a really important moment for him, and he redeemed himself slightly. You know, he was able to like turn back. But it was also another character in the game, our friend Tim's character, Mallory, who is a person who is like just really unlucky. Like, it's in her blood. Like,
by the book, Mallory is a wild magic sorcerer, and as Tim's backstory had, as I'm the DM for the campaign, so as Tim was telling me the backstory he had for the character, I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. We have a wild magic sorcerer whose entire shtick is the fact that she is super, super unlucky and is kind of an unwilling to chaos. Which, and then you have Alistair, who is, well, fallen to the dark side, still a cleric of order. And it is made for some really, really interesting character interactions and things like that. And I got to sort of tie a little bit of that theme of order versus chaos in with the story that's going on. with them, which has been absolutely amazing. And I think there are certain little small things that sometimes you don't intend as when you're writing a backstory for Burton like that in an animated story, but the DM just sort of has the ability to run with it and make something really, really cool out of it. Something I think I found was actually really interesting with Selenia's backstory in our Sunday campaign. How she actually like knew certain people in this town that were able for them to help us in our sort of mission, and at the same time bring another old antagonist into the fray.
Oh yeah.
Well, the knowing people in the town, that was actually kind of a surprise to me too, but at the same time it kind of makes sense a little bit, so I just kind of rolled with it.
Yeah, as a DM, like she for the Sunday campaign, she sent me like a list of like the characters, really gave me like an in-depth like what the situation was and like what each character would do and all that, and like it really made my job really easy to have her in the game because there was so much that I was just like, oh, it's already written for me, you know. But then also like Selena's struggle of like Merton is after me, he won't stop. And the cool thing I liked about him was he's not even like he hasn't even like tried to hurt you in person yet.
Everyone hates him.
Yeah, and everybody hates him.
I figure it's only a matter of time. Although, at the same time, Merton is very much one of those kind of characters who hurts people by hurting other people, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Like, he doesn't attack, like, he wouldn't attack directly. He's all about, okay, how can I use, you know, this person's emotional status or whatever against them.
Yeah,
I'm dead.
that's all good.
It's okay. It happens.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, even as we're like sort of like fighting these these big five in this criminal city that we in the Sunday game, then we now have this this smaller sort of antagonist that's been introduced to us that's making our job really difficult.
Okay.
Oh, with Selenia and Merton?
Yeah, because like they're just the interactions we've had with Merton. It just feels really hard to. He's making things difficult because he's reading into the group a bit more than we want.
Oh yeah.
Being a general antagonist.
That is kind of how he makes a living on reading people and exploitation. Like, that is his primary thing, is who is this person, what are their weaknesses, who are their, you know, who are they close to,
Yeah.
and how can I use all of this against them.
Yeah, there was one moment where like he told Nellet like he could tell like he knew Nellet was like not one of them necessarily.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, okay, well I'm interested in one of the people traveling with you. I would like to buy them. You said you need money, and he was trying to bait him into like she's not a slave or like, and because it's a slave town and they're trying to like infiltrate, and Nellet like doesn't know her that well, and he was like not wanting to like submit her to that sort of life or even like pretend to. And I think that's the funny thing about like certain characters is like you'll introduce them and the players just attach, and you can tell that's when it's like a really good character.
Honestly, I'm scared for Nellict because
Yeah.
he's got a target on his. Because like, I know both in game and out of game, dude's got a target on his back, and that concerns me very greatly. It concerns me very greatly as both a player and as a character, because Selenia's whole thing is she doesn't really like dragging other people into her problems. Like, she's very much one of those types of people.
Hey, look at that.
Nice. Got promoted.
Hopefully you get some loot boxes and get some new skins.
I think one interesting thing that I like, especially when it's starting starting out making a character. I know for myself, I always have character ideas and all that sort of stuff floating through my head. So yeah, Chris can attest to this. I've never played a straight class in my entire life. I've always a multi-class. I'm sorry. I love mix and matching things.
That's fun.
But it's always interesting to, for me, I usually start with in a character concept, like a class combination, and then I build the character around that. I know for some people it's different. Some people come up with like a character idea and then build the class combination or the class to that character. But it's just, there's different ways of going out and making a character, and there's really no right or wrong way. It's just sort of what feels best to you.
Oh yeah. I think the one thing I think people should stay away from is this is what my character would do. I'm chaotic neutral, so I'm gonna steal from you and betray you, and you can't be mad at me. And it's just like, that's not role playing, man.
Not, yeah.
Like,
yeah, there's such a thing as character progression, But if you're playing an antagonistic character, that's okay. Just
expect it back.
Yeah,
exactly.
Don't think these are gonna go over too well. Like a note on that from our Friday game, Dishkerman, who, I mean, he's not technically antagonistic all the time, but one of our characters was playing a necromancer, and oh my gosh, the man would kill anyone, but not like outright, but like, you know, if you got him his bad side, you're probably gonna die.
Yeah.
But there's some people are always talking about how, I know a lot of times people are always saying, like, you can't mix like a lawful evil character and a good character and a party. Well, not exactly true. It just depends on how you play it. I've always subscribed to the idea that alignment does not determine the character. Character determines.
Yes. And on that point, just looking at real life, you know how many times I've worked with people who had completely different like morals than I did? Not necessarily that they were bad people, but like, in real life, I'm very much like a lawful type of person. I'm not gonna break a rule because I can. Like, and the reason for that is not necessarily that I don't want to get in trouble. It's just because I'm like, oh, I see the point. Some people are like, it's fine, but like those people aren't always like at each other's throats. There's just sort of like a different way of like looking at stuff. So like, an evil character, Alistair was a lawful evil character, but he had a soft spot for like normal good people, like normal people. He just was really, he's like the Punisher in that, like with criminals, that was it. You didn't get mercy because you chose not to give it to others. But that doesn't mean like somebody who was like, you know, a criminal defense lawyer, he's not gonna go kill them. That's their job, you know. And also like Mallory is a chaotic neutral, completely different morals than his, and that he actually has a crush on her, and it has nothing to do with her morals. It's just he sees why. He's like, okay, I kind of understand why she has that mentality. You don't have to have like, oh well, I'm lawful and you're chaotic, and therefore, yeah, and it's like, everyone has a different reason for leaving their home and joining a job where you might die every day. But like, you're all there together, and you need to remember that like, there's a reason why you grouped up, whatever the reason may be. There's no need to sit there and like, oh, let me just like start a fight with everybody over gold pieces, you know? It's like, who's like murdering each other and betraying each other for 10 gold, you know?
You got $5 and you're not giving it to me?
Why? Yeah.
Another thing, especially when crafting like backstories and stuff like that, I know a lot of people, especially people in games like Crash, like really cool and epic backstories for their characters, and that's good sometimes, but to a degree. Like your character should not, at like level 1, have already fought like an ancient god.
Oh my, yeah. So I hear that a lot of like, yeah, they're like the son of a king and they can have an army at their back at any time, and like you're just like, okay, but like that's not gonna come into play, right? Like,
Yes, that's actually kind of boring. With that way.
Yeah. For an example for that one is that one of my characters, my old character died. He got beheaded, but I'm playing his sister, who watched him get beheaded right in front of her eyes. But that's another story for another time.
yeah.
In her backstory, she and her brother, she and her 2 brothers, killed a dragon, a young dragon at the age of like. Now some people would be like, that's pretty powerful. I mean, like, not really. They were being trained at the time to be warriors and stuff like that, and it's not something that gives her an advantage over anyone else at the moment. Like, we're all level 9 characters. It kind of made sense for things in the backstory.
There's a Goldilocks zone, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
because like Lehan, he wasn't lying when he said that when he was like a young teenage kid, fought a rock, and it wasn't that he like killed it, he fought it. And like he has 3 scars on his face from where it grabbed him, and like you have to look at it like, okay, you can have him do something epic, but it needs to make sense. Right. And like another thing that I see a lot, and I apologize if I'm calling somebody out, or like it feels like I'm talking about you, because everyone has different styles, and I want to preface that. It's okay to like not like what somebody else does. It's not okay to tell them how to play. And so what I don't like when people are like, yeah, I'm a half orc, but I'm a half orc, half water ganassi werebear who thinks he's a bugbear, and I have traits of all of them. I'm a super soldier. It's like, what?
Yeah,
like,
it's a little overkill.
I've heard that exact phrase, and it's like, you don't want your race to be the gimmick, in my opinion, because it's like halfway through the game you're gonna get bored. Like if like your entire premise is your weird, crazy race, and that's all there is to it,
It's sort of you can be, especially like with the half race, like half orc, half elf. I would say like you can be like, in my game as a DM, I would say like, okay, you can be half orc, half something else, but you only have the stats of the half orc. You're not gonna get extra stuff just because you're half something else. You gotta choose one of the other.
Which, I mean, to me that makes sense. Until they actually make a proper
Comp face.
Well, they had that new thing. It's
the damn fear and the
well, they have those like you can change your racial like things now in Tasha's. Yeah, which I think opens up a lot of room to like really like choose what your like race can give you, and all that. Because like when I was playing Lehan, the initial orc stats were like, they made him stupid, and I was like, man, kind of sucks. Like I get it. Maybe orcs aren't like the most learned, but it's also like I don't think they're like innately just dumb,
Well, it's because Lehan is not like your Warhammer 40k orc or your Shadow or Lord of the Rings. That's just straight up like just not smart.
yeah.
He's a sophisticated orc that is isn't like traditionally learned, but has smarts and intelligence.
Yeah, like he's not gonna be able to tell you anything about history necessarily, unless it's like pertaining. Because like when people say, "Oh, I have a low intelligence and I'm not learned in history," doesn't mean like you're like, "Oh, I don't know anything." Like, but like he knows like orcish legends and stuff that like occasionally he'll be like, "Oh, I've heard of that," and like people are like, why or how? Like he doesn't have a high intelligence or whatever. And it's like, just, you know,
Well,
tribal
that's always
stories.
the myth. Yeah. I
Um,
think that,
yeah.
especially with coming with pertaining to like stats and things like that, a stat does not. Stats are really, really wonky and weird. Just because you have a low charisma character does not mean you have to be like a douche to everyone you talk to, or doesn't mean you can't talk to anyone.
Or the
You're not the
opposite.
best right. It just doesn't mean you're the best at getting your idea across.
Yeah. Or one thing that I've noticed is like with what's it called? High charisma characters. They're always the most obnoxious. Like won't shut up. Like will never take no for an answer. Like kind of characters. And it's just like whatever. That's not high charisma. Like in my opinion, where people are like, you know, you want me. You know, you want to talk to me. Give me a deal. And you're just like,
Oh,
holy crap. You're like the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. Like, that's one of the things I noticed, like, especially with, you know, bards. Like, there's that whole stereotype of, oh, all bards do is, you know, seduce dragons and crap.
That's like the entire theme of Selenia, though. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no.
I'm just kidding. No, like that's why I love like bards who are different. Like Evelyn and Selenia are honestly very good examples of bards who don't have to be the source of all like have dragons, you know, or like the source of like Ganassi.
Evelyn is a lore bard who is really, really super duper shy and does not like talking to people. And isn't good at talking to people. But when she needs to, she can, and when she's role played as like your book nerd who suddenly got thrust into this world of adventure and has no idea what she's doing.
Yeah.
She's just trying to survive.
Yeah, speaking as a book nerd, though, we have our override.
Oh yeah. Like we'll get to that point where we're talking to someone and it just be like your brain just starts frizzing and shorting out. You're like, I don't know what to say anymore. There were words and now there are none.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that's okay. As being a bard, that's okay to not be just like the main force in the room and just like everyone look at me, I am the greatest, you know. You can be different. Stereotypes are cool and they're okay, but you don't have to be the stereotype.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is why I have endeavored that I will never actively seduce anybody. At least not as Selenia. One of my other bards might be tempted to do that.
It happens, you know. I think that was an interesting thing for me when I was making Kynan, who was my sorcerer warlock that got his head chopped off. But because he is your very stereotypical edgy warlock. Like he is full of angst and edge and like think teen emo and you've got him.
Yeah.
But it was in a way that wasn't overbearing and wasn't oh gosh, not this again. It was just, yeah, that's his character trait and it's kind of cool, but we're all kind of worried about him.
Yeah. It's high noon. You know, it's kind of one of those things where like you think about. I always think about TV shows when I'm making characters of like, would I like this character? Like, would I find them interesting, or would they be like this like two-dimensional character who like gets old after a season, you know? And one thing that I thought was
looking at TV shows for character ideas. Do not, I repeat, do not look at anime. It doesn't stack. Trust me. It doesn't work. Not how it works. Continue, Chris. Sorry. Kind of had that.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of depends, I guess. Like, I've seen people like, well, I want to make this super epic, like, character who eats souls, and, like, you're just like, whoa, you're level 1!
Yup.
Like, you can make Goku, but you're still gonna have to start out at level 1, and you're not gonna have like a 49 strength.
You can't punch a god at level 1, man.
Yeah, and like, one thing too is like, oh man, we've seen this a few times online, and we talked about this a little bit last session, of when people get really invested in their characters, they don't want their characters to die. And then there's some people who are like, the DM should never kill the character.
Oh jeez.
And it's like, okay, so we should never be afraid then. We should never
Right.
worry about anything in the game because it's not going to happen.
Right.
And there's a Goldilocks zone of like, oh, you don't want to just go out there and like whoop their asses.
Right. You do not want to try to kill PCs unless, like, as a DM, you should never try to actively kill a PC. But if you're playing a creature or a character, that's a little bit different. If the creature character is going to try to actively kill the PC, then yeah, don't move to that. But like, as the person behind those things, if they're not going to try to kill them, you shouldn't be using them to try to kill the player.
Or using your god power to pretty much like, you know what, I know for sure this is just going to counter the shit out of this person, and they're going to die. Like, that's in bad taste.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been in campaigns that are like that.
Yeah.
In a campaign that is like that right now, in my Friday game, like half of the party is currently feeble-minded.
Oh, yeah, you were telling us about that.
It's like, okay.
It's like, well, what do we do about this?
Just all, like, what is it, like 1 intelligence, charisma, and wisdom? Is that what it does? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, you can't talk, you can't understand human speech.
I've turned into
If you're a caster, you can't cast spells.
That sounds like a
you
pain.
get to the lowest wisdom characters.
Oh no.
That, you know, there's a snowball's chance in hell. If there's not even a snowball's chance in hell, then breaking out of it.
See, that's a thing as a DM, that you have to know how to use things properly. Do not be throwing a Tarask at your level 5 party, because they're not going to survive. Unless you explicitly state along the way they need to run.
Yeah.
He technically didn't even need to do that to us, because I forget what monster it was that we were fighting that did it, but there's like there were like other things that it could do that didn't involve feeble-minding the party, but he chose to do that anyway. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Well, like, the example of... Yeah, it seems, from what I heard of him, it sounded like really out of place.
That is sort of DM mindset of you have to know how to use your stuff and what's too much and what's too far. I mean, you can throw an overpowered enemy at your party, but you have to give them the hints along the way as this thing is happening that they're not supposed to fight this.
Yeah.
I think if for any of you who have watched Critical Role, think back to when the Chroma Conclave showed up on. They weren't winning that fight. There was no winning that fight.
Yeah, or was it 4 ancient dragons, or was it 5?
Yeah, I think it was 4, because I killed one already. But yeah, you have to sort of make it known to your characters that they are just supposed to be running. Otherwise, don't do it, because they're gonna fight it and they're gonna die.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of like what I did on Sunday's game with Jasper Vile, the gunslinger Dragonborn. It was well known that he was a evil shit and that he was dangerous. Ooh, nice.
Nice.
Hey,
It was biceps.
it was not well known that he put shotgun traps behind his door.
Yes, that was. That was funny.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so they were infiltrating his house to try to kill him, and they had the whole layout of the house. You know, they got it a time when the dude would be home, and they went through the stairwell, and no, it was Breeza, the monk, who set the trap off the first time.
First one.
Yeah, and it was like, if anyone's played Fallout, they have like Fallout 4. They have those little shotgun traps where you like open the door and just like poof and it shoots you. That's where I got the idea, and obviously that's really loud. And
Rogue tried to disarm the next one and failed, and it went off.
yeah.
Bad news bears, man.
So he was in there like just basically just like doing his nightly stuff, and all of a sudden he hears like boom. What the hell was that? Boom! All right, someone's in my house.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
And so when he came to the door, he was like, he yelled, "Wrong house, motherfucker," because he's an evil, chaotic evil character. He was like, "Who's in my goddamn house?" You know, and shot the.
A warforged full of holes.
Yep, he killed the warforged because like.
That was a lot of.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing. In the moment I was like, oh, well, like, would he just outright shoot one person? And he was going to, but then he was like, oh, there's more. I didn't realize there was just like this group in my house, you know. So I had someone roll a d6 to see who he would hit, because like sometimes in the moment the characters are just like, oh, I gotta figure this out. Like, who am I gonna hit? And so I did that, and he shot Vault.
Again. Absolutely wrecking him.
Yeah, and
Was,
but at the same time, though, like I would hope that people know that I would not just like, oh, let's kill him. And then like Nellic died fighting the ARRRRRE reverser, and it was only because he went up to it. He like. In D&D 2, there's not like there's like, oh, tanks, healers, and damage. Like, there's so many different layers to a character, mechanically, you know. And so like Nellic being he's a celestial warlock. He is a celestial warlock. That doesn't mean like, oh, he's a damage dealer or a healer. He can do whatever he wants, you know. But like he got attacked by this creature and it happened to kill him. I'm not aiming to kill anybody, but the characters or the monsters are. Because if they don't, they're going to die.
Yeah.
and I think also as a player, I know that you get attached to your characters. I know that you really, really like them. I love Kynan to death. He is one of my favorite character I've played so far. And he went up against a character with a purple sword and got decapitated, and now his soul is with his patron, so there's literally like a 1% chance I can get him back. And that's okay! You have to be okay with your character dying and having to move on sometimes, because it happens. Sometimes you cannot resurrect the character, sometimes you can't get them back, and that's okay. It's okay. You get new things to try out now. You have a great new story. I mean, you have so many plot hooks now. I had already had in his setup that he had had his sister was traveling with him, backup character. So you have things like that, like family members being notified that, you know, like their brother or sister or their son or daughter has died, and now they want to go avenge their family member. So it's always a really good thing that you can have in the background.
Yeah, you know, there's so many layers of like what you can do, and you know, there's a place for just death. Like, I've never played Tomb of Annihilation, but apparently that's just the theme of like, and that's fine, and that's what. And then in like Curse of Strahd, I've never played Curse of Strahd, but I heard a lot of people say that it's difficult.
I'm actually, Josh and I are in a Curse of Strahd campaign right now, and yeah, there's been a lot of near mishaps.
Is it like really difficult?
And what's kind of funny is a lot of the, or at least in the case of this week, the near mishap could have very easily been avoided.
I heard about that one.
Yeah. We should have, well, first of all, not put the idea into the DM's head. And also, we should have listened to Josh's character.
You know, I told you it was a trap. I did. I told you so many times.
It's a trap!
Yeah, one of our I don't know if you explained the full thing, but like one of our guys made a funny reference to something, and the DM ran with it and turned it into an encounter, and we nearly died.
Nothing like getting slapped by a hamster.
And that was a moment for me was really interesting because I had never had a DM go mechanical like aftermath of what it's like to be flash fired by a fireball. That was horrible.
Yeah, that was
horrible.
that was not fun.
and like, oh jeez. So like, there are things that will happen that just if there are red flags, notice them. Don't go towards them. If there's a gazebo in the middle of the woods that has a singular chest sitting in the middle of it, do not open the chest.
Okay. Literally any of my other characters would have not touched it with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, well, okay, no, I stand corrected. I have two characters who would have absolutely just taken the challenge and gone for it. Because I have two characters who have who collectively have the IQ of a turnip.
The common sense is not there.
One of them is Andromeda, and the other is my kobold cleric.
Oh, kobolds.
Kobolds have what we call very, very little self-preservation idea.
They try their best. You know, like, one thing I think is not said a lot, and this is important. If you have a problem with what your DM is doing, just talk to him about it. And DMs, get over your whole, like, I'm DM, I'm the god, because if you're going to do that, people are going to leave your campaign. And I have to say, if your DM doesn't listen to you, leave the campaign.
Yeah.
Because, like, if they straight up are just like, oh, well, that's how it is. And, like, there's a difference between, like, okay, I hear you. That's a concern. The reason why I made that ruling was because of X, Y, and Z. I understand what you mean, but here's why I did that. You know what I mean? Like, that's how you handle that. Instead of, like, well, the rules are just guidelines, and you're being a rules lawyer, and you need to shut up and just do what I say. I would leave that campaign. You know?
Yeah, that is definitely not the way to...
DMs, you are not the, you are the narrator, not the god.
Yeah, and it's important to, like, give your players a chance to talk to you about stuff. Like, make them feel, like, if there's comfort, they're never gonna, like, leave or, like, not be interested in your campaign without telling you. You know? And so, like, players, you're never gonna find a fun game if you keep going into, like, terrible, toxic, like, environments. Like, be picky. Like, I know it's hard to find a game sometimes, but, like, I hear people say, well, any game is good in D&D, even if it's shitty. And it's like, no! Stop doing that!
Sometimes no game is better than bad game.
Agreed.
Do not
yeah,
subject yourself to horribleness just because you want to play.
Yeah, and nowadays with all the different platforms like D&D Beyond and you know, with Roll20 and all this, there's so many ways to find a game online. I never thought I would want to play online with people because I know how people are, but like I ended up like finding a couple really good games through like just a Critical Role fandom. So I met these two, and there was a couple where I joined and I was like, I definitely don't want to be a part of this. You know, Because there's people who think their characters should never die, and you think that that they're the DM god, and there's a bunch of stuff like that, and it's like, but be choosy, like, and eventually you'll find a game where you're like, man, this is great.
Yeah, I feel actually pretty fortunate that I've only had one campaign that I've been in that was like, okay, this is kind of dumb, but thankfully that one didn't actually last very long because the DM was moving to another country.
Oh, so he was already leaving anyway? Was it the DM that was the problem?
Yeah, his DM style was very much this is my world and my rules, and you're just pawns in my story. Which I kind of...
I'll be right back. I gotta check something real quick. Keep going.
Oh, you're all good.
Which, for me, that kind of thing doesn't work. Like, if you're gonna be like that, where you need to have that much control over the story and the characters and stuff, at that point you should probably just go right above it.
Yeah. You're supposed to be friends, That's the thing for me, is we're supposed to be buddies, And you're gonna act like that? Like, I understand there's sometimes like people are kind of rules lawyery, but like the reason why they're doing that is just because they're like, it takes a long time to learn this game. And so when all of a sudden you join the game and you have no idea what you're doing because the DM decided to change something without like mentioning it, it's kind of like a bad feeling of like, great, I don't know how to play my character now,
Yeah.
I've had that happen with like when I played an illusion wizard, and the DM was like, well, they're just like cheap holograms, they just see right through it. And I'm like, well, no, they have to use their action to see through it. And they're like, no, that's stupid, that's overpowered. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, I see that a lot on online when people are like, well, these core classes are overpowered, so I'm gonna nerf it. And it's like, these were made by like game designers. Like, a monk is not overpowered, they're just good at what they do. Bard is not overpowered, they're just good at what they do.
I've always told myself that it's not nerfing the players, it's finding ways to challenge their features. If a fighter or a barbarian is getting to you because they're just mowing through your encounters, there are certain things get around it, like mind control. Have the party deal with how to figure out how to do it. Super strong melee class.
Yeah, like, I'll be honest, I know for a fact that Lehan is difficult to challenge.
Yeah.
And I'm not even a min-maxer. Like, he's just, it is what the class is.
For a note, Lehan is a barbarian paladin, and it's horrifying.
Yeah, he kills things in like 2 hits, if not 1. And like, but at the same time though, he's really easy to mess with if you just have a flying creature. Or if you have things that are more like movement inhibiting. You're gonna mess them up. Like, they're in my opinion, unless you're allowing some weird homebrew like class that you found off a D&D wiki, don't do that.
Oh jeez.
Do not do that.
Don't.
Bad idea.
Don't get stuff from D&D wiki. It's really bad.
And again, from the last episode, whatever you say yes to, that's your fault. So like,
Yes.
but at the same time though, like, if someone's like, oh, druids are overpowered because of their transformations, they're turning into like quarter challenge rating creatures.
You are OP. Not really. But Moon Druids, I love Moon Druids. I love them so much. They're just... They're not overpowered. You have to learn how to deal with them.
They're tanky. I mean, but at the same time though, if that throws you off, start looking up ways to like improve your DM toolbox. And then like, but players, if you're like, again, if your DM's like, well, I don't like that you're playing a monk because you can just like use your action to get rid of any mind control things, or like you don't take fall damage, they're mad at you for being a monk.
That's their problem. That's
Like,
the way the classes work. That's the way the class works. That's what the class does. And
I saw somebody like mad about that Blood Hunter ability, and they were like, oh, well, if they hit them with their right damage, they can just track them indefinitely, and it's like, well, yeah, that's what they
That's
do.
what it does. And it's horrible because that's what I wanted Hunter's Mark to be, but it wasn't. Matt, you lied to me.
You lied to
Looking at
me.
you, Matt Mercer.
Yeah,
Uh,
honestly, it's a really cool class. Like, it's just different. And when people see how much the thing does, they're like, it's overpowered. It's like, well, they hurt themselves to do stuff. Like,
one of them, if you've watched Critical Role, one of them died because he was using his.
he killed himself with his ability.
I actually have a funny Blood Hunter story from my old Saturday game.
Oh yeah, cool.
So, yeah, one of the players was playing a Blood Hunter, and we were fighting. I don't remember what kind of. Oh, it was some kind of dragon. I don't remember exactly what kind. We were in a swamp, and so the dragon bites down on the Blood Hunter, and this was like shortly after the Blood Hunter might have gotten this wrong. There's like some kind of ability they have that whatever damage is done to them, they can throw it back.
Like this?
Yes.
Yeah, that changed, and I was so sad about that. But it used to be like that. It was one of my favorite blood curses.
Oh, that doesn't exist anymore?
It doesn't exist anymore, and I'm really sad.
Ah, poop.
I really
Because
wanted.
he killed the dragon.
Yeah, by reflecting the damage back.
Yeah, he killed this dragon by the dragon trying to eat him.
Let me show you what you taste like.
Let me show you something.
And we were all just oh god.
Oh, trying to knock him off.
I'm not sure what happened there just now.
It's the Lucio.
He booped you.
The boops.
All das boops. I did to the Zenyatta when we first started. It's really cool though.
Blood Hunters are interesting, and like I said, there is no singular class that is overpowered. Like I said, it's just you have to learn how to do them.
Yeah. We're like, oh, you know, like sorcerers do so much damage, it's so overpowered. It's just like,
Elsa.
it's like, yeah, but it's like people are like, let me just add 50 hit points to it. And it's like you're just like dragging the fight along. You're not like making it more interesting.
Yeah, just do again going back to my Saturday game. The DM kind of made us all slightly OP, so he just kind of started adding the shield bonus to every monster.
Yeah.
Really?
That was literally the only way to make it a challenge for us.
Yeah. Or like I knew somebody who was like, I'm just gonna add magic resistance to everything, but it's like because, and I was just like, well, you always put characters who are these like basically a fighter, like a big orc character or like a big ogre, and then like when we hold person it, you get all pissed. Like.
If you are beating your head against the wall trying to make the same thing work over and over again, don't do that. It's not working. Try something new. Do not just go, I'm going to throw an even bigger monster at them this time and it's going to work, because it won't.
Yeah. And then like the same guy, he gave me that like manual of like wisdom to my wisdom was 22 and I was a cleric, and he was complaining about how high my save was. And I was like, well, yeah.
You gave me this.
I didn't ask for that. You put it in the game.
Sometimes we as a DM create our own worst monsters. In my Friday game, one of our characters, who's a dwarf champion fighter, your vanilla base fighter, like just super vanilla, is a monster.
Oh, Gardner.
This, I cannot... I had planned an entire counter the other Friday based around like this horde of zombies rising up from this sandstorm that they were trapped in. And the fighter turned it into a game of whack-a-mole. Because zombies would pop up, it would go back to his turn, he would just whack them all down, and they would... That was an oversight on my part, forgetting the fact that our fighter is really good at dealing lots of damage.
It's what they do.
And that was an oversight on my part. But like, don't just because that happened, I was like, okay, well, let me change how encounters work. Let me make it not just hordes of enemies for them to hit. Let's make it a little bit different, a little bit more mind gamey. So in this most recent session, I threw a horde of mind games at my players to try to solve.
You're gonna give poor Tim a heart attack.
I know. I really am. I really am.
We gotta have Tim on one day. I love Tim.
He is amazing. Love the guy so much. He's the one who plays Evelyn Mallory.
Yeah, which today I want to name the title of this episode. What are you? Because he does it every time and he doesn't know like what things are.
Yes.
What is this?
I think for me, especially when making characters, one of my favorite things to do is just to like not tell anyone what class or race I am, and just watch people go like, "What? Okay, I think I have an idea of what you are," and then you do something completely out of the blue, like, "Wait, what? What are you?" When the barbarian starts speaking into your mind because they're a Kalashtar, it's like,
yeah. But it's always funny watching. Huh? Sorry.
As a player, read your abilities. Read them. They're so helpful. I've had so many times in our Sunday game where I have completely forgotten that I have the ability to speak into people's minds and let them talk to me 80 feet away from me. And we're doing like espionage missions, and I haven't even used that. Like, I think this is the first time I'm using it. It would be so easy. All of our missions would have been so easy if we didn't have to speak out loud and have to like run messages back and forth, because I could just be like the go-between. But no, me as a player forgets to look at what I have.
Yeah.
Oh, I do that all the time.
You know, like a lot of things too, like to make an interesting character, like is one, knowing your abilities, knowing what the character is, because like the more familiar you are with what you do, the more familiar you will be with what you would do in a situation, or like having a backstory. Because like from what I've seen, Selenia knows very much what she would do in situations, which I've admired a lot. Of like where she was like, I would not tell them at first, or like I don't want them to worry about me, or to, you know, whatever it is. Like she knew how she felt about like the situation.
Yeah. Which I have found, like, especially if you know your character well, and you know how they would react to something, it makes it very easy to when the DM asks you, so what are you gonna do? To be like, okay, yeah, I know exactly what's gonna happen, what I'm gonna do right now, instead of having to sit there and be like, what would my character do?
Hang on, guys. Let me look through my 3 pages of character stuff and
exactly.
You know, and like it's okay to be patient and give people a chance to like, you know, do their characters, but like. Yeah. As a DM, it's like sometimes you're like, okay, on your turn, what are you gonna do? And it's like this like 15-minute like slog of like.
Well, I do kind of have a bit of a secret of why it's easy for me to figure out. Okay, this is exactly what Selenia would do.
Because you're the ultimate role player.
Well, basically, if I'm being perfectly honest, Selenia is basically an insert character. Like, she's me, but cooler. If I'm being...
I mean, everybody likes her, so that's a good thing.
So, you know, thinking about, okay, what would she do in this situation? I didn't really have to think about it, you know.
Just like, what do I do?
Okay, what would I do in this situation? And then I just kind of go with that. Which does kind of, you know, make it easier.
That's
Makes it easier on me to think, okay, I have this character.
And sometimes that's also a helpful thing too. Just like, well, what would I do? How am I? And then also, if your character's different than you, but like, okay, well, how would they be different? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
These AI characters just run off by themselves.
I'm okay with that. But I think it takes knowing your characters, knowing what they would do and how they would do things like that. Sometimes it's hard to, when you're switching characters or in a new campaign, to get like old character ideas out of your head. But it is just practice. It takes time. It's not gonna come right away immediately, but it's something you need to work towards. And for new players who, okay, I will preface this: you do not have to have a voice for your characters. I know everyone wants you to. I know it's what everyone does, but like, it's okay to not have a character voice for your characters. It's hard doing voices. I have spent so much time looking in a mirror and saying weird things, thinking that I'm half crazy. That I get voices for my characters, but it's okay to just talk in your normal voice as your character.
Yeah.
Guilty as charged on the giving characters voices. All of my characters have a different voice.
Yes. It's a bad thing. But it's
Or
okay
rather,
if you can't.
most of my characters, a lot of my characters have basically variations on the same voices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As much as I, enjoy doing voices, there's only like 5 that I'm actually comfortable with.
Yeah, I can't do Scottish. I cannot do Scottish accents to save my life. And it comes really hard because when I put a dwarf PC in and it's just like I know everyone thinks he's supposed to sound Scottish, but he's just gonna sound like an American dude. Sorry.
For voices, like a helpful thing for me is I'm a people watcher in real life, so like I just like watch people and like listen to them. So like I sort of like remember people that I've seen in public or people that I at work had to deal with or coworkers, and I'll take that personality and I make an NPC as a DM. But also it's really funny sometimes just to like make a character who has a funky voice. I had one that I did when I was doing D&D for work. It was an NPC named Cecil Brine Shell, and he was a turtle. And I remember there was this guy when I used to work at Lowe's who was like asking for a tubifer. And I was like, a what? A tubifer! But he had this like really weird voice. He was like, hey man, can I get a tubifer? I need one of them tubifers.
It's like I don't know what you're saying.
Yeah, and so accents like I sometimes when I'm in the car driving or something, I'll just like make a voice and try to say random things that I'm passing in that voice. It's a good practice of just like trying to say normal things. So when it's time to say something specific, you know what they're gonna say. Like so you're like
it's
a process.
And it's okay to sound weird. That's fine. Perfectly fine to sound weird. Don't worry. It will sound weird, and that's all right.
But if someone's like, hey, your Russian accent is not accurate at all, and it's like, well, we're American, and we have weird accents all over our own country, so we're going to be a little weird imitating something else. We're trying to do something we're not comfortable doing. But I think it's important, like, as a player, to, like, if you want to be comfortable, help others be comfortable.
And like I said, it's okay to not be comfortable with a voice. It's okay to not be comfortable with. It's just it takes time to work things out, and it's okay to not have the same comfort level as someone who's been 6-7 years. That's okay. That's true. No one is going to start out being the best role player in the world right off university. That's not how it works.
Alright, I'm gonna be cheap and switch.
Going to Bastion?
No, I'm going Reaper.
Okay, that's not cheap. That's just
Rust.
yeah. I mean,
I forgot to warn you guys about. I have the sense of direction of a drunk wombat.
oh, no.
A drunk llama. That's oddly specific.
I know that feeling very well. As when I was first playing this, it was just like I don't know what's going on. The screen is going everywhere, and there are a lot of bright things happening.
Yeah, this is a lot.
That's why we're doing AI, you know? I'm just trying to get used to just following a point. What is wrong with you? Why are you coming this way?
Gamer starts
I'm expecting them to do what real people do, and like
Don't expect.
they keep going these weird directions, and they come off from the side by themselves. I feel like that's not like helping with Kim's like sense of direction when they're just like just running out like random directions and like maybe we should start doing that in like quick play. Just like let's not even go together. Let's just scatter.
Randomly just go everywhere. Just watch them like, what do we do now? I think of any other ideas I could say for about like creating characters and stuff like that. Ability scores. Going back to that thing. You have to be okay with not having all good ability scores. There will be one, maybe two dumb stats, and that's okay, because you don't have to be good at everything. Even though you
Yeah.
really want to be.
You know?
Yeah, some stats are fun.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean that's normal. Conversely, I had this happen, and it's actually like not coincidentally the worst DM I've ever had as a player. He was this fighter who his whole premise was he was a cobbler who killed his guild leader and was on the run, right? Which is fine. Weird that he chose cobbling, but like, but he was like, oh, I don't want to be min-maxed. I want to be good at cobbling. And so I said that like wisdom would be a good like homey sort of like stat to use for his cobbling, you know. And he was like, okay, cool. But he had like a 13 and a 14 in dex and strength. So he wasn't like good at being a fighter, but he would get pissed when he would miss. So he was like, oh, I only have like a +3. Okay, well, like, and every time he'd be like rolling a 10, and he's like, I can never hit anything. Why is everything so hard? And I'm like, it's not. Its armor class is 14.
You did this to yourself.
Yeah, and he's like, well, you expect us to min-max, and I was like, no.
Like, no.
There's a difference between like min-maxing and like, oh, I have a wizard who's got a 10 intelligence. Like,
Exactly.
you chose to do that. Like,
Right. If you do that, do not be surprised when you can't do anything, because that's your
Take your
fault.
steps accordingly, people.
yeah.
Of course, I say that, but have either of you ever looked at what Selenia's dump stat is?
It's con.
Oh,
Yes.
But she's not frontlining, though.
right. And I think that's okay.
She's not like, oh, let me just run in and, like, fist fight Jasper. You know?
See, I've always, for me, a lot of times, I put my dump stat in intelligence, because, you know, like, characters that... And I've noted a lot of people do that. And as a DM, it's kind of fun to prey on that idea.
Yeah. Intelligence saving throws are oftentimes, like, very rare, and also really mean. You get, like, mind blasted by a mind flayer, you're gonna have your head eaten.
Yeah. Or even worse, intellect devourers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be, with ability scores, you have to be choosy. You have to be like, okay, I know what I'm going to be good at, and I know I have to be okay with what I'm going to be bad at.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes folks will see the ability scores and just like, oh, I have a -1. I can't read. You know? It's just like, dang. Just like straight to it, huh?
I mean, if you are like a -4 intelligence barbarian, maybe so. But if you're like a regular townsfolk who's just, you know, you maybe have, you're not dumb.
Yeah. I would say it's kind of like, if I'm sure many people have worked customer service. Those people who you're like, I can't do that. And they're like, why not? Like, for example, when I worked at a theme park, I can't seat your 3 boys because our maximum ride limit is 12, and we're at 11. And she was like, I don't understand. It's like, ma'am, I can't do that because I'm not allowed to run more than this number. Well, I don't see why my boys can't go. Because you have 3, and you want them all to go together.
Seats still out.
Yeah, and it's not that she's dumb. She just wasn't understanding what I was saying. And it's things like that, or the people where there's like a big yellow sign that says "Warning, Danger, Electrocution," and they just walk right past it and they get electrocuted. Like, low wisdom. They're not paying attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean like you're blind and like you can't like understand anything. It's just you'll miss stuff, you know. Like Lehan, he originally had a 9 intelligence and now he has a 10. But like I still play him as like when the first people are like, oh yeah, you know, taxes, and he's like, what? What's that? You know, and they're like, they told him, and he's like, oh, people said that was bad.
People told me that those were bad.
And they're like, well, what do you mean?
Wrong.
And they're like, well, we meant to do, and like, if they explain it better, he'd be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But like, if someone's like, yeah, we take their money, you know,
Oh, like a really good example of that. Sorry for interrupting.
no, you're good.
But like a really good example of that was when we first were meeting. We first like all met together, and Leon was like an outlander, you know, someone who hasn't been like in society before, and our bard gave him soap to clean up with. Leon
Aw.
was like, I don't know what this is, but it's small and looks bite-sized. So he ate the soap, and it tasted horrible.
And people are like, how do you bathe? He goes, I usually use scented like herbs and I go on water. What do you do?
And that's low intelligence. That's like, you know, that's not dumb as a brick, but it's I don't understand.
Or like,
Yeah,
like again, charisma. When people are like, oh, high charisma. It's kind of funny when low charisma and high charisma have the same result.
yeah. Low charisma asshole. High charisma asshole.
Yeah, you're just like, what? How is this the same? Like,
I know. But yeah, I mean, characters are interesting and they're finicky. It's there is a good fine line between running a character that is good and that runs well with your party and your DM, and also and then just being a complete and utter douche.
yeah. I also feel like people like lean into certain classes and it has to be only this or it's not that. Like Yasha from Critical Role, I've been seeing a lot of like, well, she's just like multi-class into Paladin, and it was like, but why? She's a Zealot barbarian. You know,
Which, for any of you who have Zealot barbarians in your class, if you get to level in your party, if you get to level 14, just send them to the front lines, man. They can't die.
yeah, and they're like a holy barbarian.
Yeah.
And so she's got like a charisma of 7, and people want Mercer to like double her charisma so she can be a paladin, just to use a loner weapon. And it's like,
I know. I
It's
was like, guys, no, he's just gonna respect the weapon so she can use the weapon. I mean, come on, guys.
yeah, just do, but like, or for example, when someone's like, I was talking about Alistair, and someone's like, why don't you just play a bard? I was like, 'cause I didn't want to play a bard. I multi-class later and I took it back because of like story stuff. But like, you know, like just because like a class has a trope of like you can have like a non-cleric holy person, somebody who is a fighter who worships Palor and believes in like the harvest and the rising of the sun every day and like justice. Doesn't have to be a paladin, you know. Or like somebody who plays an instrument. There's like entertainer backgrounds if you want to play an instrument. You don't have to be a bard.
My other character in the Sunday campaign, who is on the mend right now because saw some things and had to go take a look. But he is a military officer, and I made his second highest stat charisma because he has to be able to command people, get them to do what he needs them to do. And the party was like really surprised at first. They're like, "Who has the best persuasion over here?" And I was like, "It's probably me." And I'm like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah. Or like you know what? Tez. Tez is a good example of like out of the ordinary, like what classes do. Because Tez is a recovering insane goblin who basically touched the wrong tablets and went insane. He was like if Miss Frizzle failed her class and they died. And like he's a druid. He's a sports druid, but he's also like an academic. Not a wizard. You know? And I think that's kind of a funny thing is like he's not like, "Oh yes, I know how to I know all these things because I'm a wizard." He's just like, "Oh yeah, nature." Like his field is different than his class.
Yes. And that's okay. That's like, I mean, you can have someone who's like that. That's not like, if you have a skill, sometimes it goes from different things. Like like you said, Tez is a druid who is more of like a wizard, like in mindset, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine.
It was for your
the comfort zone is pretty good.
Yeah, wasn't it for your one shot that we did? I did that rogue, and he was a police officer.
Oh yeah.
And like when people think rogue, they don't like think law enforcement, but it really does fit.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that you have to think about. Just be like, well, I could do something that's a little bit, you know, that seems like a non-bow, but it really isn't. And that's okay. That's fine. Something that seems like it doesn't work, but does is pretty interesting.
Yeah, and if you're not getting something out of like a class that like is not 100% like what you want, look at like getting things and like using flavor, you know?
Yes.
Because if you're like, "Oh, I want my Eldritch Blast to be a white flaming skull," you can do that. Or if you like, "I want my Fireball to be like steam because I'm like water based."
Yeah.
Like you don't have to make everything like exactly as it says.
Yeah, that's honestly why I love spells like Spiritual Weapon, for example, is a good one, because you can make it look like literal anything, which is fun. Like I took Spiritual Weapon as part of, you know, the additional magic secrets for Selenia, cool. So hers is a big dog, which I've been debating changing, honestly, because that was kind of a carryover from my Saturday game, where she was a worshiper of one of the halfling gods.
Oh, okay.
Which those kind of aren't really a thing in the Exandria pantheon.
Right.
Poor halflings.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's.
No, I haven't.
I don't think there is.
I don't think it's ever going to be like expanded on, but I've noticed that none of the halfling gods are in the pantheon of Exandria. So I'm debating if I'm going to change what her spiritual weapon is, because it is very much tied to Urogal, who is one of the halfling deities.
Run you over.
And another thing about characters is, especially when you're trying to make decisions in game, sometimes there will be tough decisions that you have to be faced with. Like, do I want this to happen? Does my character want this to happen? Do I not want this to happen? Does my character not want this to happen? And sometimes you gotta make the call in the way that sometimes you yourself would not make, and it feels bad or it doesn't feel right. Sometimes it's just And this is not saying like going back to like this is what my character would do. Don't use that to be a dick.
Yeah.
But
Um.
one of the things like in with my sorcerer multiclass Heinen, there was a moment in time where the DM gave him a chance to go save his sister who had been captured. It was like the dead middle of the night, and I was like, I myself, I really wanted to tell the party so they can try to tell him not to. But he was like, yeah, no, I'm taking this opportunity. I don't want them to tell me no. So he just left. Which the party was very angry with me for.
Yeah, but that was like in game, you know, like I almost killed one of our beloved NPCs as Leon, because he was being a dick. You know, he comes from a place where he's like, wow, these people are freaking soft. He's like, they're afraid of everything. They think like killing something is like the worst thing you can do, you know, and like don't want to do anything. And like he was just frustrated, you know. Different culture and all that. But then like when someone, one of the NPCs was like, you need to get over yourself and blah blah blah. He, you know, and he like he used fear on him, and he doesn't like being like messed with in his head. And he grabbed him by the head and shoved him to the ceiling. He was gonna kill him, and like, but he waited because he was like, I need to not like.
That was just a really tense moment, like all around. There were so many things happening. Like, Will was our bard in that campaign, and then Coates was the NPC of Leon. All like bickering and fighting, and my character was just done with you all, and then ice knifed the group.
Yeah, yeah.
Just a bad time.
But like that's in-game conflict. That's interesting.
Yes,
You have gotten like
okay.
4 play of the games with him.
I really think of you.
You and that diarrhea gun.
If you just like spray it where everyone's like clumped up, it's just like.
I have issues.
But
Honestly,
no,
it kind of makes me want to try.
Yeah.
What's up?
Go.
It makes me want to try playing Torbjorn.
Yeah, you
Or
totally.
try- Yeah. Go ahead. I can easily give him.
Oh no, maybe next time.
Gotcha. And I
He's
never
really
think-
fun.
Because
Yes.
right now I'm still kind of scared. Still don't entirely know what I'm doing.
Well, when you
I
get a
think
play of the game, make sure you save it so you can like rub it in people's faces.
Yeah, I guarantee you, I am never gonna get play of the game.
You never know. Say never. Never say never.
I remember Josh saying, "I don't think I'm ever gonna get play the game."
And then the thing, speaking of like character like in-game conflict, it's okay to have conflict between characters. Don't shy away from it. Don't actively seek it out. Don't shy away from it.
But at the same time, make sure that you know the difference between, you know, in character and out of character.
Out of character.
conflict.
Yes.
Do not
Yeah.
cross the streams.
And it's
Yeah,
still like
yeah.
just like with the DM issues. Check in. Say, hey, you know, how did you feel about this interaction? Is there something I can do different? You know, like did I upset you? You know, it's important to kind of like make sure you're on the same page. It's a collaborative effort. So like, if someone did something that bothers you, say something. They may not know they're doing it, and if they do know they're doing it,
Yeah.
maybe you shouldn't play with them.
Yeah, and you know, it doesn't necessarily need to be like, you know, public call out. You can just like message them privately. I mean, I had to do that quite a bit with my old Saturday game.
And I think like, yeah, I know in our group on Friday we've had like character conflicts before, and sometimes like in the middle of it or afterwards we'd be like, just so we all know, I was like, that was my character speaking to the other character, so I was not mad or angry at any of you guys.
Yeah.
And that's okay to do. That's perfectly fine to do, just to make sure that you've got the right feel for the room and you know what's going on, and you're not like doing stuff that's actively actually hurting other people. Like, but yeah, I mean, I can't think of any other topics to talk about characters. at the moment.
No, I think that
I'm like
went
picking
really
my
good.
brain, but I can't think of anything.
Yeah. So I think it's probably pretty much what we got for today. But I mean, we will be back next session, and I'm not sure what topic we'll be doing, but we will try to figure it out throughout the week.
Something.
What are we, ARRRRRE?
But yeah.
All right. Well, what about
Thank you
you?
all so much for listening to our rambling ideas.
Yeah.
And, thank you guys for having me on here. This was actually really fun.
No problem.
Yeah, no problem. It was great having you.
It's always fun to just like talk D&D
Yeah.
Oh,
mechanics and ideas with people.
That's what this premise was. It was never like a constructed thing. It was just like, hey, let's play some games and like bullshit.
Yeah.
You know?
Let's just talk.
Let's watch Kim like just destroy people.
Yeah,
We're
I am
getting there.
not
I'm
gonna lie.
watching it.
Like, know that.
Eventually, like you're gonna get these really cool plays, and someone's gonna call you a hacker. It happens all the time.
Hacks!
Can you please switch from Ball? He's so cheap. It's happened a few
How
times.
are
You're
you
just like,
blinked out of that? I had you at like 10 HP.
yeah. Or I'll get pissed when they play Bastion, and I'm just like, point and click. That's all it takes.
Oh my gosh. I should not have done that.
Get out of here.
So,
I always feel bad killing Meg because she looks like Tim's character Evelyn,
Character Evelyn.
Oh my gosh, she totally does. Oh my god.
and just like sitting there like beating the crap out of her. He has the same mannerisms and everything too.
Yeah.
So I'm just over there just like watching her die.
It's just like, this feels bad.
Alright everybody, well, I'll go and end the stream today. I hope everyone had fun. I had a lot of fun.
Yes. Thank you all so much for, like I said, listening to us ramble about our ideas about playing characters and Dungeons and Dragons and all of sorts of weird stuff. We hope you had fun.
I had a lot of fun.
Or something, maybe.
Alrighty, we'll see everybody next time. Bye.
See you later.
Bye.